Tom Richards stared through the reinforced glass window of Centauri Space Station, watching alien ships dock with what he considered reckless speed. His fingers twitched every time a vessel came in too hot, too fast, or too close to others. After 5 years as the station's safety inspector, he still couldn't get used to how carelessly other species treated space travel. "Still hiding behind your window, human?" A deep voice rumbled behind him, afraid a ship might scratch your precious station. Tom turned to face Captain Dox, a towering blue-skinned alien whose species had mastered faster-than-light travel centuries before humans had even reached their moon. Like most aliens, Dox viewed human caution as a sign of weakness. "Just doing my job, Captain," Tom replied calmly, making a note on his tablet about the unsafe docking speeds. "Those approach vectors are well above safe limits." Dox let out a sound between a snort and a laugh. "Safe limits. Always with your safe limits. Tell me, human, how did your species ever leave their planet with such fear?" "Carefully," Tom answered, straightening his gray safety uniform. "Very carefully." The conversation was interrupted by a soft chime from Tom's tablet. He glanced down at the screen, his eyes widening slightly at the readings. The station's long-range sensors had detected unusual solar activity. "Excuse me, Captain. I need to check something." Tom walked briskly toward the station's monitoring center, ignoring Dox's dismissive wave. The monitoring center was a circular room filled with screens and holographic displays. Most of the alien technicians barely glanced up as Tom entered. They were used to the paranoid human making his rounds. Tom pulled up the solar activity readings on his personal station. The numbers made his stomach clench. The local star was showing signs of an incoming solar storm, one that could potentially dwarf anything in the station's records. "Control, I'm seeing some concerning readings here," Tom announced to the room. "We should begin emergency preparations for a Class 4 solar event." The alien technicians exchanged looks that Tom had become all too familiar with, a mixture of amusement and annoyance at typical human overcaution. Richards, the chief technician, a green-scaled being named Krell, spoke without looking up from his station. "Our shields can handle solar activity 10 times stronger than what you're seeing. This is hardly worth noting." "The pattern suggests this could be different," Tom insisted, pulling up more detailed scans. "The magnetic field fluctuations are showing signs off." "Enough," Krell cut him off. "Go do your safety checks somewhere else. Some of us have real work to do." Tom stood his ground. "I need to log this officially. Station protocol requires." "Your human protocols," another technician interrupted with a laugh. "Did you know humans used to wear thick suits filled with air just to step into space? They thought the vacuum would make them explode." The room filled with laughter. Tom felt his face grow warm, but he kept his voice steady. "Those suits saved lives while we were learning to handle space. There's nothing wrong with being careful." "There's careful," Krell said, "and then there's human careful. Do you know why humans are the only species that still uses triple redundancy in their life support systems?" "Because we like staying alive," Tom muttered, but no one was listening anymore. They had already turned back to their stations, dismissing both him and his warnings. Tom looked down at his tablet again. The numbers hadn't changed. If anything, they were getting worse. He began typing up his report, marking it as urgent. Someone higher up would have to see it, even if they chose to ignore it like everyone else. As he worked, Tom thought about Earth, about how his species had survived countless disasters not through strength or speed, but through preparation and caution. Other species called it cowardice because they had evolved on safer worlds. They hadn't faced the constant threats that shaped human development: earthquakes, hurricanes, volcanoes, and 1,000 other natural disasters. Humans hadn't become careful because they were weak. They had become careful because they had to be. Tom finished his report and sent it through official channels. Then, following standard human protocol, he began preparing his own emergency measures. If he was wrong, they would laugh at him again. If he was right, well, He hoped he wasn't right, but he would be ready either way. An hour after filing his report, Tom walked through the lower maintenance tunnels of Centauri Space Station, his boots making soft echoing sounds against the metal floor. His tablet beeped steadily as he scanned the radiation shielding, and with each reading, his worry grew stronger. "This isn't good," he muttered, placing his hand against one of the shield panels. Even through his glove, he could feel it vibrating wrongly. 5 years of inspecting these systems had taught him what normal felt like. This wasn't normal. His tablet chirped with an incoming message. It was from his human colleague, Bill, another safety inspector who worked in the station's engineering section. "Got your report," the message read. "Running extra checks on the backup systems. Something feels off." Tom smiled slightly. At least he wasn't the only one who took these things seriously. He typed back quickly. "Check the radiation panels in section E7. Getting strange readings here." He continued his inspection, marking down every problem he found. The list was getting long. Worn connection points, outdated shield generators, and safety systems that hadn't been properly maintained. The aliens who ran the station kept saying the systems were good enough. But good enough wasn't going to cut it if he was right about that solar storm. A loud laugh echoed through the tunnel. Tom looked up to see 3 alien maintenance workers heading his way. "Look who it is," the tallest one said, his metallic skin gleaming under the tunnel lights. "The human who thinks the station is going to fall apart." "Just doing standard checks," Tom replied, trying to keep his voice neutral. "Standard human checks," another worker said with a sneer. "Did you know they still use manual override systems on their ships? As if computer systems would ever fail." Tom thought about pointing out the 5 major computer failures he documented in the past year alone, but kept quiet. Instead, he asked, when was the last time these radiation shields were upgraded? The workers looked at each other and shrugged. "They work fine," the first one said. "Stop worrying so much. This station was built to last." "Built to last isn't the same as built to survive," Tom said, but they were already walking away, laughing among themselves. He checked his tablet again. The solar activity readings had gotten worse. The storm would hit within 24 hours, and it would be much stronger than anything in the station's records. Tom made his way to the emergency supply storage, a section that had been added on human insistence when they joined the station's crew. Inside, he found Bill doing inventory. "Glad you're here," Bill said without looking up. "These readings are making my skin crawl. Reminds me of the Jupiter Station incident." Tom nodded grimly. The Jupiter Station incident had taught humans a harsh lesson about space weather. Since then, they'd become even more careful about solar storms. Other species called it paranoia. Humans called it survival. "I found major problems with the radiation shielding," Tom said, showing Bill his tablet. "If this storm hits as hard as I think it will." "Have you told command?" "Tried to," got the usual response. Bill shook his head. "They'll never learn, will they? Always thinking we're just scared little humans." "Start prepping the emergency shelters," Tom said, quietly. "I don't want to cause a panic, but I want us to be ready." "Already on it. I've also started checking which sections have human-grade shielding. If things go bad, those will be our safe zones." Tom looked at his friend with gratitude. This was why he trusted human safety protocols. They didn't just plan for things to go right. They planned for everything to go wrong at the worst possible moment. His tablet beeped again. The solar storm's intensity had just jumped another level. "I'm going to try warning them one more time," Tom said, heading for the door. "But after that, we do it the human way," Bill finished. "Prepare for the worst and hope we're wrong." Tom nodded and walked out, his mind already racing through emergency procedures and evacuation plans. The aliens might mock human caution, but soon they would learn why humans treated space with such respect. The station's lights flickered slightly, so briefly most species would miss it. But Tom noticed. He always noticed, and he knew They were running out of time. The first sign that something was wrong came when the lights across Centauri Space Station flickered 3 times in rapid succession. Tom, who had been trying to sleep in his quarters, was on his feet before the third flicker ended. His tablet was already screaming with alerts. The solar storm had arrived 6 hours earlier than expected, and it was far worse than even his most careful predictions. The station's intercom crackled. Minor power fluctuation. A calm alien voice announced. All systems functioning normally. No cause for. The message cut off as the entire station shuddered violently. Tom grabbed his emergency kit, something all humans on the station kept ready, and rushed into the corridor. Red warning lights flashed everywhere, and he could hear the growing hum of failing shield generators. All humans to emergency stations, Tom broadcast over the Human Emergency Channel, a system other species had called redundant and unnecessary. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. The station shook again, harder this time. Through the nearest viewport, Tom saw massive waves of energy washing over the station's shields. The barriers glowed bright blue, then began to fade in places. Primary shields failing. Someone shouted over the main station channel. It was Krell, the same technician who had dismissed Tom's warnings. The alien's voice wasn't calm anymore. This is impossible. Our calculations. Forget the calculations, Tom cut in, switching to the main channel. All personnel need to move away from outer sections immediately. Head to the station core. Who gave you the authority? Krell began, but another voice interrupted. The human is right. It was Captain Doc's. Our shields are failing. We've lost contact with 3 outer decks already. Tom reached the emergency control center to find Bill already there, working at a console. Human shields holding at 82%, Bill reported. But only in our sections. Through the center's windows, Tom could see chaos in the main corridor. Aliens of all species ran past, many looking lost or confused. Their own safety systems, which they had always trusted completely, were failing one by one. Radiation levels critical in sections E through K. The station's computer announced. Automatic containment failing. Those are the sections with the old shielding, Tom said grimly. He hit the station-wide broadcast button. This is Safety Inspector Richards. All personnel in sections E through K must evacuate immediately. Move to human-shielded sections. Follow the green emergency lights. The green lights, another human addition that had been mocked, began flashing along the corridors, guiding people toward safe areas. Why are the human sections still intact? Someone demanded over the comm. It was one of the maintenance workers who had laughed at Tom earlier. Triple redundant shielding, Bill answered, his fingers flying over his console. Backup power systems, manual overrides, everything they called us cowards for installing. The station shuddered again. Through the viewport, Tom watched in horror as one of the outer habitation rings began to break apart under the storm's assault. Ring 3 breaking up. He shouted into the comm. Is anyone still out there? Maintenance team trapped in Ring 3, Section F. A panicked voice replied. Automatic doors won't respond. Tom was moving before he finished processing the words. He grabbed an emergency suit, human-made with extra safety features, from the wall locker. Tom, what are you doing? Bill asked, though he already knew the answer. Being the coward, Tom replied, sealing the suit. The careful, cautious human way. He pulled a manual door override tool from his kit. Another piece of equipment other species didn't bother with, and headed toward Ring 3. The corridors were already beginning to fill with emergency containment foam. Yet another human safety measure that was proving its worth. The foam would help hold the station together and provide some radiation protection, but it made movement difficult. As Tom pushed through the foam-filled corridor, his suit's sensors screamed warnings about radiation levels and structural integrity. But the suit held. Built to human safety standards, it was designed to survive far worse conditions than any alien would consider necessary. Behind him, He could hear Bill coordinating the evacuation over the comm, directing people to safety using the emergency protocols that humans had insisted on drilling every month. Maybe, Tom thought as he forced open another sealed door, they'll finally understand. Sometimes being called a coward is better than being called a casualty. The station groaned around him as he pressed forward into the growing chaos. The storm was far from over, but at least now everyone knew what humans had always understood. In space, caution wasn't just a choice, it was survival. The emergency suit's display showed dangerous radiation levels as Tom pushed through the foam-filled corridor of Ring 3. His helmet lights cut through the haze, revealing warped walls and crackling electrical panels. Behind him, he dragged a floating emergency kit. Another unnecessary human precaution was about to save lives. "Status report," Tom called through his comm. "Things are getting worse," Bill's voice crackled back. "We've got about 300 people in the human-shielded sections now, but the main computer's failing, and we've lost contact with Deck 5. Tom reached a sealed door and pulled out his manual override tool. "What about Captain Dox?" "He's actually helping. Ordered everyone to follow human evacuation protocols. Guess nearly dying changes minds pretty quick." The door groaned open, revealing 3 alien maintenance workers huddled in environmental suits that were clearly struggling to handle the radiation. Their faces showed a mixture of fear and relief when they saw Tom. "Your suits are losing integrity," Tom said, checking his sensors. "Here." He pulled spare radiation shields from his emergency kit, small devices that would boost their suits' protection. The aliens didn't argue or laugh this time. They just took the shields with shaking hands. "Control, I've found the maintenance team," Tom reported. "Starting evacuation through Section D7. "Negative," Bill replied quickly. "D7 corridor just collapsed. You'll have to go through the service tunnels." Tom nodded, though no one could see it. "Follow me," he told the maintenance team. "Stay close. Step exactly where I step." They moved carefully through the dying section of the station. Tom's suit sensors guided them around dangerous radiation pockets and structural weaknesses. Every few meters, he placed small marker beacons, yet another human safety device that had seemed excessive until now. "Why?" One of the maintenance workers started, then paused. "Why do you have all this equipment? All these backup plans?" "Because we learned the hard way," Tom replied, helping them through a partially collapsed passage. "On Earth, we had to deal with disasters all the time. Earthquakes, storms, floods. Space is just another dangerous place we had to learn to respect." They reached a service tunnel entrance. Tom's override codes, stored on a separate system from the main computer, of course, opened the hatch. "Control room." A new voice came over the comm. It was Krell, the technician who had dismissed Tom's warnings. "We've lost primary life support in sections H through M. None of our recovery systems are responding." "Switch to human backup systems," Bill replied. "Authorization code Richards 74. There was a pause. "How? How do we do that?" "Remember those manual control panels you called primitive?" Bill's voice had a hint of satisfaction. "The ones with actual physical switches. Use those." Tom led his group through the service tunnel, following his markers. Ahead, he could see the soft green glow of the human-secured sections. His comm crackled again. "All station personnel," Captain Dox's voice boomed. "As of now, Safety Inspector Richards is taking command of emergency operations. All crew members will follow human safety protocols until this crisis is resolved." "That's an order." Tom almost stumbled in surprise. An alien captain putting a human in charge. The situation really was desperate. "Copy that," he replied, helping the maintenance team through the final hatch into a safe section. Medical staff, wearing human-designed radiation gear, rushed forward to help. "Bill," Tom called over the comm. "Get me a full station scan. Use our backup sensors." "Already on it." Human sensors show structural damage in 18 sections, but our reinforced areas are holding. Emergency power at 60% in human systems. Total failure in alien systems. Tom looked around the crowded safe zone. Aliens of all species huddled together, many still looking shocked that their advanced technology had failed while the primitive human systems still worked. "Start moving people to the emergency shelters," Tom ordered. "Human safety teams, begin damage control procedures. Everyone else, follow their instructions exactly." He watched as human crew members began organizing the evacuation. Their drills, monthly exercises that aliens had called a waste of time, were paying off. Everyone knew their role. "The storm's not over," Tom announced to the room. "But we're going to get through this, the human way. Carefully, cautiously, together." And for the first time since the crisis began, no one laughed at the word cautious. 8 hours into the crisis, Tom stood in the emergency command center, studying the holographic display of Centauri Space Station. More than half the station glowed red, showing areas too damaged or dangerous to enter. The sections in green, the human-reinforced areas, stood out like islands of safety in a sea of destruction. "Status report," he called out, his voice rough from giving orders for hours. "Emergency shelter A is at capacity," Bill reported from his station. "Moving new arrivals to shelter B. All human safety systems still holding." A loud bang echoed through the station, making everyone jump. Tom checked his readings quickly. "Just another panel breaking loose," he assured the worried faces around him. "The main structure is holding." Captain Doc stood nearby, watching the humans work with newfound respect. He had spent the last hour studying the thick emergency manual that every human crew member knew by heart. "I don't understand," Doc said quietly. "These procedures, they account for everything. Power loss, computer failure, hull breach, radiation leaks. You even have plans for if artificial gravity fails in specific sections. We call it Murphy's Law," Tom explained, marking another section red on the display. "Anything that can go wrong will go wrong. So we plan for everything." Another human crew member, Lisa from engineering, rushed in. "The alien crew in Section C need help with the manual life support systems," she reported. "They've never used hand-cranked air pumps before." Tom nodded. "Show them how. And remind them that the pumps need to be turned every 15 minutes. Set up a rotation schedule." He watched as Lisa hurried off, then turned back to the station display. The storm outside still raged, but the human sections were holding steady. Their backup systems, redundant safety measures, and manual overrides, all the things aliens had mocked as primitive, were keeping everyone alive. "We need to move these people," Tom pointed to a crowded section near the station's outer ring. "That area's showing stress fractures. But the emergency shelters are full." An alien technician protested. "That's why we have backup shelters," Bill said, already typing commands. "And backups for the backups." The alien technician blinked all four of his eyes. "How many backup plans do humans have? How many do we need?" Tom replied, remembering all the times aliens had laughed at human preparation. No one was laughing now. A small alarm beeped on Tom's console. The radiation shields in Section F were weakening. Without looking up, he reached under his station and pulled out a handwritten checklist. Paper, because paper didn't need power to work. "Engineering Team 3 to Section F," he ordered. "Bring manual shield generators. Follow Procedure 7B. "Written procedures," Captain Doc said, shaking his head. "Physical backups. Manual overrides. We called all of this primitive." "Sometimes primitive survives when advanced fails," Tom replied, watching as human crew members guided aliens through manual repair procedures. "Technology is wonderful until it stops working. Then you need backups. Simple things. Reliable things." The station shuddered again, but less violently than before. The storm was weakening, but they weren't safe yet. Tom had learned long ago never to relax until the crisis was completely over. Another human trait that aliens had called paranoid. "Look at this," Bill called out, pointing to his screen. "The aliens' automatic repair systems are trying to restart. They'll overload if they do." "Disable them," Tom ordered. "We'll do repairs the human way. Slowly, carefully, double-checking everything." "The human way," Captain Dox repeated softly. "You know, we always thought your species was held back by fear. But it's not fear, is it? It's wisdom. The wisdom to know that space is dangerous and unforgiving." Tom nodded, marking another section for inspection on his paper chart. Around him, human crew members continued their methodical work, following procedures they had drilled countless times. Their alien colleagues watched and learned, finally understanding that caution wasn't cowardice, it was survival. "We'll start repairs once the storm passes," Tom said. "Everything checked 3 times, everything tested before use. It'll take longer, but we'll all be alive to complain about the delay," Captain Dox finished. "I'm beginning to understand the human way." The main view screen showed nothing but blinding white light as the solar storm reached its peak. Tom stood at his command station, double-checking readings on his tablet while keeping one eye on the paper logs spread before him. After 16 hours, his throat was dry and his eyes burned with exhaustion, but he couldn't rest. Not yet. "Hull breach in Section R," someone shouted. "Already sealed," Bill responded calmly. "Automatic emergency bulkheads engage. Human-installed backup doors holding at full strength." Tom allowed himself a small smile. Those backup doors had been expensive. The station's management had complained about wasteful human safety measures when they were installed. Now those same doors were saving hundreds of lives. Krell, the alien technician who had once dismissed Tom's warnings, worked nearby. He was studying the human emergency manual with total focus, his earlier arrogance completely gone. "These backup procedures," Krell said, looking up from the manual. "They're all based on real accidents, aren't they?" Tom nodded. "Every safety measure we have came from a disaster. Every procedure was written in someone's blood. That's why we take them so seriously." The station creaked ominously, metal stress echoing through the corridors. But in the human-secured sections, nothing broke. Nothing failed. Every system had a backup, and every backup had been tested and retested. "Main power failing in sections T through D," the computer announced. "Switch to human backup generators," Tom ordered. "Emergency teams stand by." The transition was smooth. They had practiced it monthly in their safety drills. As alien systems crashed one by one, human backup systems took over. Battery-powered lights, hand-cranked air circulators, manually operated airlocks, all the primitive equipment was keeping the station alive. Captain Dox entered the control room, looking exhausted but determined. "Inspector Richards," he said formally, "I just finished reviewing your original safety reports from the past year." Tom looked up from his displays. "Sir, you predicted this. All of it." Dox held up a tablet showing Tom's old reports. "The weaknesses in our shields, the over-reliance on automated systems, the lack of proper backup procedures. Everything you warned us about has happened exactly as you described." Before Tom could respond, another alarm sounded. A new display showed radiation levels spiking dangerously. "Radiation warning," Bill announced. "Levels exceeding alien shield specifications. But still within human safety margins," Tom added, checking his readings. "Our shields were built to handle worse than this." Around the control room, alien crew members watched in amazement as the human systems continued to function. Their own advanced technology had failed hours ago, but the primitive human backup systems kept working steadily. "Why?" one of the maintenance workers asked. "Why build things so much stronger than they need to be?" "Because space is always more dangerous than you expect," Tom replied, initiating another safety check sequence. "And luck favors the prepared." Suddenly, the main lights flickered and died completely. Several alien crew members gasped, but Tom remained calm. He reached under his console and pulled out a box of emergency light sticks. simple chemical lights that needed no power. "Pass these out," he ordered, handling them to a nearby crew member. "Everyone remember your emergency positions." The green chemical light filled the room with a soft glow. In that light, Tom could see the faces of the alien crew, no longer mocking, no longer dismissive of human caution. Now they watched the humans work with something close to awe. "Status report," Tom called out. "Human emergency power at 60% and holding steady," Bill reported. "All critical systems functioning normally. Backup life support operating at full capacity. Emergency shelters secure." "The storm's reaching its peak," Krell added, studying his readings. "But," he paused, looking surprised, "the human shields are actually getting stronger. The magnetic reinforcement is adapting to the radiation patterns." "Adaptive shielding," Tom explained. "Another paranoid human innovation. The worse things get, the harder our systems fight back." Captain Doc stepped forward, his voice carrying across the control room. "Let it be noted in the official log. The human safety protocols and backup systems have saved this station and everyone aboard it. We owe our lives to what we once called cowardice." In the green glow of the emergency lights, Tom continued his work. There would be time for recognition later. Right now, they still had a station to save. The human way. The careful way. The way that worked. 1 week after the solar storm, Tom stood at a viewport watching repair crews work on the station's outer hull. The crews now worked in pairs, one alien and one human, following new safety protocols that combined the best of both worlds. "Inspector Richards," a voice called from behind him, or should I say Chief Safety Officer Richards. Tom turned to see Captain Dox approaching, holding a datapad. The alien captain looked different now, more humble, more respectful. "Just Tom is fine, Captain," he replied. "The new title still feels strange." "Well, you earned it," Dox said, gesturing at the station around them. "The Galactic Council's report just came in. Would you like to know what they found?" Tom nodded, though he could guess. The evidence was all around them. Half the station still bore scars from the storm, except for the sections protected by human safety measures. "The Council's investigation confirmed everything," Dox continued. "Your safety reports from the past year predicted almost every failure we experienced. If we had listened sooner." He paused, looking out at the repair crews. "Well, we're listening now." Through the viewport, Tom watched as a repair team practiced using the new manual override tools, copies of human equipment that were now standard issue throughout the station. Every alien crew member now carried emergency supplies that would have been laughed at just a week ago. "The Council has ordered all stations and ships in galactic space to adopt human safety standards," Doc said, reading from his pad. "Triple redundancy systems, manual backups, regular safety drills. Everything we once mocked as excessive." Tom smiled slightly, remembering all the times he'd been called paranoid for insisting on such measures. "And the new training programs. Starting next week, every crew member will learn human emergency procedures. The Council is particularly interested in something called Murphy's Law training." A group of alien technicians walked past, each carrying the thick paper emergency manuals that humans had always kept handy. No one made jokes about primitive paper books anymore, not after seeing how useful they were when power failed. "There's more," Doc said. "The Council wants to establish a new galactic safety division. They're requesting human leadership." Tom raised his eyebrows in surprise. "Human leadership? That's unexpected." "Is it?" Dox gestured at a nearby emergency shelter, one of many that had saved hundreds of lives during the storm. "Your species survived on a planet with earthquakes, volcanoes, and storms. You learned to prepare for disaster because you had to. The rest of us," he shook his head, "we grew soft, relying too much on advanced technology." Bill approached them, carrying his ever-present tablet with its backup paper notepad. "Tom, the new safety systems are installed in Section E, ready for inspection whenever you are." "The human way," Doc asked with a knowing smile. Triple-checked everything, Bill confirmed. Then checked it again, just to be sure. Tom nodded approvingly. A month ago, such careful verification would have seemed like a waste of time to most of the crew. Now they understood. In space, thoroughness wasn't excessive. It was essential. You know what the best part is? Bill added. The alien crews are starting to add their own safety suggestions. Good ones, too. They're not just following our procedures. They're thinking about how to make them better. That was what Tom had hoped for. Not just compliance, but understanding. Not just following rules, but grasping why those rules mattered. The council also sent a formal apology, Doc said quietly, for dismissing human safety concerns as cowardice. Tom shook his head. We don't need apologies, just understanding. Space is dangerous. It doesn't care about pride or advanced technology. It only cares if you're prepared. A soft alarm chimed. Time for the daily safety inspection. Tom watched as crews throughout the station began their checks, following procedures that blended human caution with alien efficiency. Shall we? He asked, gesturing toward the inspection route. Doc nodded, falling into step beside him. Lead the way, Chief Safety Officer. Show us how to do it. The human way, Tom finished. Carefully, thoroughly, and always prepared for the worst. Because in the end, they had all learned a crucial lesson. In the unforgiving void of space, there was no such thing as too careful. What some had called cowardice was really the highest form of wisdom. The wisdom to respect the dangers around them and prepare accordingly. And that was a lesson worth learning, no matter what species you were.